They do not text first. They take hours, sometimes days. They read your message, feel everything, and still say nothing. Then they come back warm, calm, almost sweet, like no distance ever happened. And you sit there wondering if you imagined the whole thing. You did not. You felt the shift. You felt the silence. You felt yourself shrinking just to keep them close. And here is the part nobody says clearly enough. They are not always running from you. They are running from what closeness wakes up inside them. The second love starts to feel real. The second it asks for softness, truth, and emotional presence. Something in them pulls the alarm. So if you have ever loved someone who wanted you, then vanished, who held your hand one night and hid from you the next, stay with me, because this is where everything changes. Not when you chase harder, not when you become easier to handle, not when you beg to be chosen. It changes when you finally understand the kind of fear you are standing in front of. And once you see it clearly, you stop performing, you stop overgiving, you stop turning yourself into a smaller version just to make someone else stay. Watch until the end, because one small shift in the way you see this can save you months, maybe years of confusion, and it may completely change the way you love from this moment forward. Maybe you know this feeling too well. One day everything feels close, real, soft. There is chemistry, laughter, eye contact that lingers just a little longer than usual, maybe even a moment that feels like the beginning of something deep. Then the next day, it is different. They are colder, slower, hard to reach, not cruel, not dramatic, just somehow gone while standing right in front of you. And because you care, because your heart is already leaning in, you start searching for the reason. Was I too emotional? Did I say too much? Did I come on too strong? Should I have waited? Should I have said less? And just like that, the relationship stops being about connection and starts becoming a puzzle you are trying to solve. That is what this pattern does. It takes your natural desire for closeness and turns it into self-doubt. It makes you question your tone, your timing, your worth, your whole emotional reality. But listen carefully. That cycle is not proof that you are too much. It is what happens when one person reaches for love and the other person has been trained by life to fear what love demands. This is where so many people get trapped. They think they are dealing with indifference, but often they are dealing with someone who feels deeply and has no safe way to hold those feelings without feeling swallowed by them. And that changes the whole picture. To really understand this, you have to let go of the simple story that they are the cold one, the careless one, the emotionally unavailable villain in your life story. Sometimes their behavior hurts deeply. That part is real. But what you are looking at is often not cruelty, it is protection. It is old survival logic still running inside an adult body. Long ago, usually early, they learned something about closeness that never fully left them. They learned that needing people could lead to pain, disappointment, shame, pressure, or emotional neglect. Maybe nobody came when they cried. Maybe they were told to stop being sensitive. Maybe love was there, but it was inconsistent, distracted, unpredictable, or emotionally dry. So the system adapted. It said, depend on no one, ask for little, feel quietly, handle it alone, be strong, be low maintenance, need less and hurt less. That strategy probably helped them survive. It probably even made them look mature, independent, easygoing, in control. But then love enters the room, and love does not stay on the surface for long. Real love asks for trust. It asks for emotional risk. It asks for the one thing they trained themselves never to do again, which is to let another person matter enough to hurt them. That is why the closer they feel, the more unsettled they can become. Not because closeness is bad, but because their body remembers it as danger. And this is where the pain between two people starts to grow fast. Because when they pull away, you do what most loving people do. You reach, you check in, you try to repair, you get softer, more available, more understanding, you offer reassurance, you explain your heart. You think, if I can just show them I am safe, maybe they will stop backing away. But for someone whose system links closeness with pressure, your reaching can feel like the exact thing they fear. Not because your love is wrong, but because their body interprets your need for connection as a demand they might fail to meet. So they back away more, and the more they back away, the more your fear wakes up. Then you send another message, then another thought spins in your head, then the distance becomes the whole relationship. This is the loop that breaks people down. One person chases because they fear abandonment, the other person withdraws because they fear being overwhelmed. Both are reacting to old pain, both think they are trying to survive. And if nobody sees the pattern for what it is, the relationship becomes a place where each person keeps triggering the wound the other one is trying hardest not to feel. Stay with this part, because once you see the loop, you stop blaming yourself for every shift in their energy. Now here is the deeper truth, and this part matters more than most people realize. They do want love, they do want closeness, they do want to feel chosen, understood, and emotionally safe. Their fantasy is not to be alone forever. Their fantasy is to be with someone who does not make closeness feel like a trap. Someone who can love them without collapsing every time they need air. Someone who does not turn space into punishment, silence into interrogation, or every emotional ripple into a heavy relationship talk. They want someone steady, someone grounded, someone who has a real life outside the relationship and does not make them responsible for holding up another person's emotional world every single day. They want warmth without suffocation, presence without pressure. They want to feel wanted but not consumed, and the irony is brutal, because the more afraid you become of losing them, the more the relationship starts to feel dangerous to them. That does not mean your needs are bad, it means fear changes the shape of love. It turns honesty into panic, connection into management, and affection into emotional labor. What they are often searching for is not less love. It is love that feels spacious enough for them to breathe inside it, love that does not arrive with invisible chains attached, love that says, I care about you deeply, but I am still rooted in myself. That kind of presence does something to them that chasing never will. It unsettles their old belief that closeness always costs freedom. But we also need to talk about you, because this is not only about the person pulling away, it is also about the part of you that keeps getting pulled into this kind of dynamic and calling it love. That deserves honesty. There is often a wound underneath the chase, and if you do not look at it, you will keep replaying it with different faces. Maybe part of you learned early that love was not steady either. Maybe care had to be earned. Maybe attention came in flashes. Maybe approval arrived only when you were pleasing, useful, easy, impressive, or emotionally controlled. So now when someone gives you warmth and then takes it away, something old wakes up. You do not just want them. You want resolution. You want the win. You want the proof that if you love hard enough, stay calm enough, forgive enough, understand enough, you will finally be chosen in a way you were not chosen before. And that is why these relationships can feel so addictive. The rare closeness feels huge. The small signs of affection feel like rewards. The inconsistency keeps you emotionally hooked because your nervous system starts chasing the next moment of relief. That is not weakness, it is a pattern, and if you do not name it, it will keep writing your story for you. So, the real work is not only learning how they function, it is asking yourself why this dynamic feels so magnetic to you, and whether what feels familiar is actually what is good for your heart. Let's make this even clearer. What they often imagine, even if they never say it out loud, is a relationship that feels light without being shallow, a bond that has depth but not constant emotional weight. They want to know they matter to you, but they do not want to feel like one wrong move will create a 3-hour conversation about the relationship. They want to spend time alone without that automatically meaning disconnection, punishment, suspicion, or conflict. They want to miss you freely, not because you forced distance through drama, but because space was allowed to exist naturally. And here is the twist that confuses so many people. When you finally stop orbiting around them, when you stop monitoring every delay, stop pouring your whole nervous system into every shift, and genuinely turn back toward your own life, they often feel something unexpected: curiosity, space, even longing. They notice your absence differently when it is not charged with demand. They feel the room around them, they feel your energy move back into your own center, and sometimes that is the exact moment they lean in again. Not because you played a game, not because you became cold, but because you stopped making closeness feel like something they had to manage. This is why false detachment never works for long. Pretending not to care is still obsession in disguise, but real groundedness, real self-respect, real emotional steadiness that changes the emotional temperature of the whole connection. So let's be precise here. Becoming the kind of person who feels safe to them does not mean becoming quiet, numb, endlessly patient, or emotionally invisible. It does not mean abandoning your needs and calling that maturity. It does not mean swallowing hurt so well that you disappear. That path will hollow you out. At first it may look like strength, but over time it becomes self-erasure, and nobody can stay healthy inside that. What actually changes the dynamic is something far more solid and far more attractive. You become full in your own life. You build routines, friendships, goals, joy, meaning, and identity that do not depend on their daily behavior. When they go quiet, you feel it, yes, but you do not collapse into it. You notice it without making it your whole universe. You stop sending paragraphs trying to explain your heart into a door that is clearly closed in that moment. You stop over-explaining. You stop begging to be understood by someone who is currently in self-protection mode. You return to yourself. You stay honest, but you stay dignified. And this matters because people who fear closeness are often highly sensitive to pressure, performance, and emotional energy that feels bigger than the moment can hold. They may not always say it, but they can feel when independence is fake, when silence is a tactic, when distance is punishment. What lands differently is the kind of calm that is real. The kind that says, I care, but I am not disappearing inside this. There is another piece of this that few people talk about enough, and it may save you a lot of wasted pain. People who shut down often have a kind of emotional timing that others do not understand. They can go cold, pull inward, disconnect, and need space before they can process anything honestly. In that period, if you chase, push, demand clarity, or keep asking if everything is okay, you may accidentally extend the shutdown. Every message can feel like more pressure. Every call can feel like one more thing to handle. But if you step back without drama, if you let the silence breathe and keep living your life instead of circling them, something different can happen. Their nervous system settles, the threat response lowers, and after a while, they look up and notice you are not trying to force your way into their inner world. You are simply respecting space. That is often when curiosity returns. That is when they start wondering. That is when they may reach out, ask a small question, send a light message, or slowly re-enter the connection. Now be careful here. This is not a trick to make someone chase you. If you use it as a strategy while secretly counting minutes and waiting for the payoff, they will feel that tension. This only works when the space is real, when your attention actually returns to your own life. And even then, it is not a guarantee. It is simply the environment in which someone like this is most able to come back honestly rather than defensively. It also helps to know what tends to shut them down faster. Constant requests for reassurance can do it. Questions like, do you still care? Are we okay? Why are you different? What happened? Where is this going? All asked again and again when they are already overwhelmed, usually do not bring closeness. They bring retreat. Turning the relationship into the main topic all the time can do it too. If every hangout becomes a check-in, every silence becomes a discussion, and every emotional dip becomes a major analysis, they may start associating being with you with emotional labor they do not know how to carry. Long emotional monologues, especially in text, can also flood them. That does not mean your feelings are too much. It means timing matters, volume matters, and delivery matters. And there is a huge difference between saying, I felt far from you this week and I miss us, and unloading every fear, every interpretation, every old wound in one moment they are not open enough to hold. This is not about censoring yourself forever. It is about understanding what can actually be received. You want expression that creates connection, not expression that simply releases pressure while pushing the other person deeper into defense. Shorter, clearer, more grounded. That often reaches farther than a perfect speech delivered to someone whose system is already closing the door. And yes, there are things that can help open the door. Giving space before they demand. It can help. Not disappearing, not acting offended, just naturally respecting that they need room sometimes. Asking about their inner world without forcing immediate answers can help. People who are guarded often have rich thoughts and feelings, but they do not always trust expression. A gentle question followed by patience goes further than 10 urgent follow-ups. Consistency helps more than intensity. Calm helps more than chemistry. If you are warm one day, reactive the next, detached the next, then needy again after that, they will not relax, they will stay braced. But if you are steady, clear, and emotionally responsible for yourself, something shifts. They begin to sense that closeness with you may not become chaos. Having your own world also matters more than you think. real friends, real interests, real work, real purpose, not performative busyness, a genuine life. People who fear engulfment are often drawn to those who feel whole. They feel safer around someone whose identity does not collapse into the relationship. And one more thing, when they come back warm after pulling away, do not answer with revenge. Do not become cold to teach them a lesson. Do not punish the return because of the absence before it. That only teaches them that relationships are battles of control. If you choose to stay in the connection, then meet warmth, but also with boundaries, with clarity, with the quiet strength of someone who is not losing themselves in the process. Now we need to touch the hard truth, the one many people avoid because hope can be so intoxicating. Before anything healthy can happen here, you may have to grieve the version of this relationship you keep dreaming about. The easy version, the natural version, the one where they reach first, reassure freely, speak clearly, stay emotionally present, and do not make love feel like a maze. That version may not be available with this person right now, and pretending otherwise can keep you trapped in fantasy while your real life passes by. Sometimes what keeps people stuck is not love, it is hope mixed with memory. You remember the tender moments, the near breakthroughs, the flashes of what could be, and you start building a future out of emotionally expensive crumbs. You tell yourself that if you finally become secure enough, patient enough, healed enough, unbothered enough, then maybe they will become the partner you have been waiting for. Maybe, but maybe not. And this is where self-respect has to enter the room. Understanding someone's wounds is beautiful. Adjusting your approach with wisdom can be loving. But shrinking yourself, muting your reality, and living on permanent emotional standby, waiting for someone else to feel safe enough to love you fully, that is not love. That is slow self-betrayal dressed up as devotion. You are allowed to be compassionate and still honest. You are allowed to understand their fear and still admit that the relationship is hurting you. This is why the question is never just, how do I make them stay? The deeper question is, are they doing the work too? Are they looking at their patterns? Are they willing to name their fear instead of making you carry the confusion alone? Are they trying, even imperfectly, to become more honest, more present, more accountable? Because if they are, then yes, patience and understanding can help something real grow. Healing is messy. People do not become secure overnight. Someone can care deeply and still stumble, still pull back sometimes, still need help learning how to stay connected. But if you are the only one learning, the only one adapting, the only one studying attachment, the only one holding the emotional weight of the bond, then be honest about what you are in. That is not two people building safety together. That is one person waiting and calling it potential. Love can absolutely support healing. It can soften old fear. It can create new experiences that rewrite old stories. But it cannot replace personal responsibility. It cannot do someone's inner work for them. And if you keep trying to be the exception that finally saves them from themselves while they remain passive, distant, and unchanged, you will burn out. Quietly at first, then all at once. This part is important, so hear it fully. Compassion without boundaries turns into self-abandonment faster than most people notice. Still, change is possible. Real change. Not movie scene change. Not overnight transformation, but deep, human, hard-earned change. People who have spent years avoiding closeness can learn to stay. They can learn to speak before disappearing. They can learn to recognize the alarm in their body without obeying it every time. They can learn that intimacy is not the same thing as being controlled, and when that shift starts happening, the relationship feels different in very small but powerful ways. They pause before pulling away. They name what is happening. They come back sooner. They stop making you guess as much. They begin to understand that being loved does not have to mean being swallowed. And often, what helps that process is not a partner who chases them into vulnerability, but someone who is deeply grounded, someone who is open without being frantic, someone who can say, I care about you, and I also care about myself. Someone who does not confirm the old story that love equals panic, pressure, drama, and loss of self. That kind of presence can be deeply healing, not because it is magical, but because it is different from what they knew before. It offers a new emotional experience, one where closeness does not arrive as a storm, one where space exists without abandonment, one where honesty is not an attack, one where two people slowly learn that love can be steady without being dead and deep without being overwhelming. If you have ever wanted to know what actually helps fear soften, it starts there. So, if you love someone like this, hold on to these truths. Their distance is not a verdict on your worth. You are not too much just because their system cannot hold closeness easily. More effort will not necessarily create more love. In fact, overgiving can sometimes strengthen the very pattern that hurts you both. Security is what changes the atmosphere, and your security has to come first. That means learning to calm your own nervous system, tell the truth to yourself, and stop confusing emotional starvation with romance. It means noticing whether unavailable people feel exciting because they reopen an old wound you have been trying to heal through love. It means asking whether this relationship is truly growing or simply repeating. And it means learning your boundary, not as a threat, but as a form of self-honoring. There is one path where two people are both doing the work and slowly moving towards something healthier. There is another where one person keeps hoping while the other keeps retreating behind the same wall. Your peace depends on knowing the difference. You can be loving without over-functioning. You can be understanding without over-explaining. You can be compassionate without becoming a home for someone who refuses to come inside emotionally. And if this is reaching something in you right now, keep listening, because the final shift matters most. It is the one that turns this from pain into clarity. At the center of all this is a simple truth that can take a long time to accept. You are not responsible for healing another person's fear of intimacy. You can offer safety, you can offer steadiness, you can offer a kind of love that does not corner, manipulate, or consume. That matters. It matters a lot, but you cannot force someone to receive what they have not chosen to learn how to hold. You cannot pour enough patience into a person to replace their own courage. You cannot be self-aware enough for two people, and you should never have to drain your spirit dry just to prove that your love is harmless. The dream for someone who fears closeness is not distance for the sake of distance. It is freedom inside connection, the freedom to be themselves without losing themselves, the freedom to love without feeling trapped. And if you become someone who offers that by being rooted, alive, honest, and complete in your own life, then you become something rare. Not a rescuer, not a performer, not a person begging to be chosen. You become proof that love can be safe. Sometimes that draws them closer. Sometimes it reveals that they are still not ready. Either way, it sets you free from confusion. And that may be the most powerful part of all, because the moment you stop trying to earn love by abandoning yourself, you finally become available for the kind of love that does not ask you to disappear. And if you are still here, let this land in the deepest part of you. Real love should not feel like you are constantly auditioning for basic emotional safety. It should not feel like every silence is a test, every need is a risk, every conversation is a negotiation for your right to feel what you feel. Yes, relationships take maturity. Yes, they take patience. Yes, they ask both people to grow, but they are not meant to keep you in a permanent state of emotional uncertainty while you call it understanding. So if you choose to stay with someone who pulls away, stay awake, stay honest. Watch what they do with the safety you offer. Watch whether they move toward growth or simply get more comfortable receiving your patience without changing. Watch whether your heart is expanding or constantly bracing. And most of all, watch who you become in the relationship. Are you becoming more grounded, more truthful, more whole? Or more anxious, more silent, more afraid to take up space? That answer will tell you almost everything, because the goal is not just to keep someone from leaving. The goal is to build something where both people can remain fully themselves and still meet each other with care. That is the kind of bond worth fighting for. That is the kind that lasts. And if no one has told you this clearly, let me tell you now, you do not have to become smaller to be easier to love. You do not have to disappear to be chosen, and you do not have to solve another person's fear to finally deserve peace.